This is a picture of a pit stop in 1950s, 60s, and there's a pit stop in 2012, 13. The fundamentals haven't changed. The fundamentals in terms of how many people can touch the car, and the only changes which has happened over the time is a pit stop in 1960s, 70s was 2.5 minutes, and a pit stop in 2013 was 1.9 seconds. The earlier pit stops were drivers used to come in and tell about their problems. People used to guess and do whatever is required to make them running within 2.5 minutes. Today, the mechanisms of synchronization of machinery and data is to an extent that when the driver comes in, exactly everybody in that place knows what sequence to follow and how soon it could be done. So what we're talking about is agility today, a place, a sense where we all are in our life. It touches us every day in terms of how agility is. And these are basically, this agility is anchored on 3 broad pillars. GE gonna be top 10 software vendor in 2020. AOL, Yahoo, companies which we know in the last 1, 2, 3, 4 years, we never have heard of them. So what is happening is this technology, the connectedness, the advance in science and technology, the innovation has brought 2 things to the business which business is really looking at and talking about is, one, the cycle of innovation has collapsed. That means there's nothing called an assured market leadership. The second thing is the disruption or the competition is coming from players which were always considered non-competitors. The hallmark of success in business today is speed, agility, and innovation. The second part of it is, because of this velocity of change, the organizations and the capability required by the people has to change. And hence, HR is central to the success of this program. The other thing which we need to keep in mind is, Josh spoke about it, and it was actually discussed at World Economic Forum in a very detailed manner. We are in Industrial Revolution 4.0. What does that mean? It means 2 things. One, if you look at from the industrial side of it, the robotics and the IoT is talking about change in capabilities and skill set required to perform. What is coming from the services side is artificial intelligence, machine learning. All these 2 things are combining together to look at in terms of what change we are driving. It requires change in skills. It requires change in capability. Hence, the fulcrum today is learning. People should know in terms of what skills are getting changed. And number 2 is what trends they are tracking in advance. And if you are tracking these 2 things, what is happening in the skills in demand are actually non-employable. What we're talking about is there are companies across the globe, largest travel portal company, travel rental company, Airbnb. Airbnb said our bookings went 2.5 times higher when the rental property had professional photographs attached to it. It is not about search. It's all about user-created content. It's the hallmark of feedback economy in which all of us are in right now. And that all is looking in terms of how we're going to reconfigure the jobs. The 2 things, millennials, yes, we talk about it, but I'm also talking about in terms of the oldest employee in the room, oldest employee in the company. The fact is, we all are consumers in a day. And this consumer in the day is based on our experience as to how we interact with telecom companies, retail, banking players. And hence, the psychographics have changed. The psychographics is people are looking at in terms of what's my purpose, what's my experience, and give me a transparency. And that's what changed on the pillars from a change governance perspective.
There are 3 anchors which are creating shift and change for HR. Arun talked about it. As we move on, really think of how do, as HR leaders, we need to translate this all change as meaningful outcomes for us, which as HR leader you are expected to deliver. And there is some background to it. 3-4 years back, we said that at Aon that we need to rethink HR transformation. So we went out, we started talking to multiple CEOs, business leaders, CHROs of largest firms across Asia Pacific. And our whole mindset was this template could not be same as what's happening in Western markets, because fundamentally many of these companies are leapfrogging cycles, and hence we need to go and talk to customer. As we started doing that outside in listening, we were surprised. Many of them, including CHROs, said HR transformation is dead, but real data was saying it was one of the largest growing consulting verticals. When they were saying that it's dead, what we realized was leaders were saying HR transformation is great, it's internal to HR, but I have these real talent problems. And by the way, these talent problems are creating a huge risk to my strategy. So for example, I was with CEO of this telecom equipment company. He said that, look, I am number 2. I am now on track to be a number 1 player globally, but I am shifting away from selling equipment to managing service. If you really look at that shift, there is a huge organization shift I need to do across 150,000 employees. How do you navigate through that? Can you really make that happen in 2 quarters? HR transformation is great. HR can have it in 3 years. So that was a constant theme. Multiple CEOs, to Arun points earlier, were saying that business cycles are collapsing. There is a demand to reorient capabilities faster, and hence HR needs to partner with us and start delivering us outcomes. The other facet which CEOs were talking about, they were consistently talking about outcomes which were higher level than any program outcomes we will see. So CEOs were talking about, not about engagement, they were talking about culture. How do I embed culture? How do I anchor my values? Because that's one constant anchor we need to use to navigate in times when there is so much disruption happening about. So interesting thing, but if you really look at it, and CEO's expectation was that in some way and form, HR is custodian of that culture, but HR will look at culture from different pieces of elephant, but not really truly together. Similarly, when CEOs were talking of capability, they were talking of capability from an organizational perspective, which subsumes things like critical roles, things like learning, leadership development, recruitment, everything together. To them, capability was really capability as a differentiator to go out there, compete in marketplace, and win. Similarly, many of them were talking about experience and engagement, but saying, how do you really set up platforms and environment to meet aspirations of my employees? He said that that's fundamental to succeeding in age and times going forward. So how do you really build this whole momentum around employee aspirations? And finally, for all the negativity and the talk around performance, it remains maybe one of the most core expectations from HR, but again in a holistic sense. And same company I was talking about, a great example, as we started doing the assessment of that organization, it was an organization doing performance quarterly on a very complex form. We thought as consultant, oh, this is really the pay dirt we were looking for. This is really one of the most worst design systems you can think of. And they had this R&D function, which was then 45,000 employees strong. And the feedback from that function was, oh, by the way, performance is our best practice process. We were shocked. We said that there needs to be something different happening there. We went in there, we checked it. We realized it was the same quarterly cycle, same messy form, and the feedback was phenomenally different. We said, what's leading to this feedback? We went and we started talking to leaders there. We realized 8 quarters back, they said that forget all about consulting, diagnostics, frameworks. We know in our system who are 200 best people managers, who are genuinely playing the role of mentorship. Let's select them. They will do their conversations. They will also help another 200 friend managers do their conversations and help them become a better mentor. Next quarter, these 400 trained another 400. So by the time we were doing that diagnostic, they literally had the whole manager pool in that 45,000 people organization who really believed in the idea of mentorship, enabling their talent to succeed. And this same worst design system was working phenomenally well. And hence, if you really look at the whole, I am sharing this example from two perspectives, not only from the perspective of the first piece around the outcomes, how people are looking at it, but also connected to the user experience. User experience, everyone talks about system-anchored things, which is easy, supported, personal, informed, all that is fine. But fundamental to user experience, to earlier comment from Arun, was transparency and trust. Once my manager gains my trust, there is way more likelihood for me to listen to my manager and take actions which can actually lead in a positive delta. And you cannot convert things like user experience to a pure set of system-driven anchors. It's important, and you need to be looking at systems, and that's the second anchor. Think of talent outcomes. Think of user experience. How do you create that user experience which resonates to your demographics? And here I have an old example, and fundamentals have not changed, as Arun was saying. We were doing this transformation with Cargill, long back, 2006-07. Then they were known as one of the best platforms globally. Even today, they are one of the most progressive platforms. And it was a very high-tech platform which got created on the back end. But on the front end, they said, look, bulk of our users are grain packers and meat sifters. Meat cutters, grain packers. That's the largest chunk of employee profile. And we are talking 2005, 6, 7. They will not use a desktop. Today, it's interesting change. They will be most probably using mobile in vernacular languages. But then desktop was not an option, and they created a whole service mechanism addressing that demographic and target segment. And it's really important to keep the consumer in mind. If you really look at process of invoicing and payment and try to add controls, streamline the process, that approach will never ever lead to an improvement for a consumer who is coming and buying in your store. Because that's an inward view and thinking of process, and that's how HR has always looked at. We have engineered processes from a control perspective, not necessarily from the perspective of user experience. So that's the second big change. And the third big change is the piece around people analytics. I get asked all the time, do you have a solution for it? Can we go live? Will it do predictive analytics in next 4 or 5 weeks? And so that's the expectations. But reality is, when we look around, we realize problem with analytics is not really tools or data. It's around ability to ask the right questions. And that really goes back to talent science. If you can really understand the outcomes, if you look at the outcomes here, how can you unpack those outcomes into set of meaningful talent questions, you will get data around it. I get asked all the time, how do I calculate an ROI on a leadership program? Step back and think. Is there an impact of leadership program for business? No. The impact for business is the effectiveness of critical role holders. How do you safeguard critical role holders in the short term? How do you get performance out of them? How do you ring-fence these roles to a better performance in future and build a more robust pipeline into those? The moment you start thinking critical roles, you will start defining very solid ROI anchors around those. And it's no surprise if you really look at all the data, including Deloitte and everyone, all of them talk about the fact that leadership remains a most heavily invested area with a very low return on investment, because HR is looking at a program mindset to that, not really a purpose mindset to that. So that's the other big change. And the third change is really how do you convert this into a lifestyle? Really speaking, the change here is move away from the whole idea of storytelling basis anecdotes, which HR is very good at, but that naturally results into politics. It's not my bad, it's your bad, why results are not coming in. Vis-a-vis that to a database collaboration where you can work together to solve for a problem, both within HR and with business. So that's really the shift around analytics. But my request here is twofold. It's not only analytics for the sake of it. Purpose is, how do you use people analytics as a lens to inform talent outcomes? So if I know my talent outcomes, which really have a genuine impact on my business results. What is the analytics which will inform me whether I am tracking right or the changes needed to improve? That's the analytics you need to focus on. How does HR create an impact in this digital world with new set of tools? Understanding core anchors better. The 3 expectations I was talking about in the previous slide. Fundamentally, it's about getting into a journey mindset. Because if you think of tools today, they will evolve at a rapid pace. So don't think of best practices and love those best practices. If you really look at HR from a technology perspective, cloud is a given. Most clients, they say that the old approach of best of breed platforms is dead. Everyone is integrating platforms. One, from a perspective of managing cost of those integration. And second, because user experience is better when you have lesser number of platforms and interconnects. So all these things are given and these changes are happening. Still, when I talk to clients, most clients are not getting value out of their technology initiatives. And a lot of these initiatives continue to fail. Idea is not to scare anyone here, but idea is to learn from clients who get it right. So I will request Arun to talk through, as he sells to many clients, what are the things which really matters to get it right from a buying to implementation to ongoing value perspective.
And Shashwat raised the right point. Clients who have defined business objective and aligned talent outcomes, they fall in the category of planning and execution and realization are the one which are the most successful. Clients who look at talent technology not as an enabler, but as a transformation journey, those are the clients which are successful. Clients who look at in terms of any vendor, in terms of what the speed of innovation they are bringing and what kind of thought leadership they're bringing and how they can align their processes to what the best practices of the platforms are, those are the clients which are successful. Clients who are successful are talking about in terms of what kind of localization from services you're bringing on the table. And clients are successful who actually look at what kind of clients have stuck to you over the last 16 or 17 years of history. Those are the clients who are successful. But the biggest clients who are successful is who always keep in mind user experience and don't get in terms of an RFP process from a nuts and bolts from a product functionality perspective. I think these are people who are in the planning phase, who actually do things right. Now let me put 2 dirty secrets of our part of the world. One of the dirty secrets of our part of the world is there's an RFP, people do a demo, and that demo, when you look at from a UI perspective, is one of the best demos you've seen in terms of platform. But you don't realize, as in open the hood and go back, how much back-end plumbing people have done to ensure that UI experience is given to you based on a scenario. Change this as we do hackathons in our businesses, give live scenarios to talk to selected vendors, and tell them how you configure that in a workshop, which is 1 day, 8 hours workshop. That will tell you really where the configuration of the platform lies vis-a-vis back-end plumbing. Second, my request, typically don't take advice from an SI because more back-end plumbing, more number of hours, more FTEs. So take that as one of the reasons that people have been successful from what people have done. People at the execution layer, if you're buying a platform, please have a platform approach. Once you buy a platform, then you based on the siloed in which the organization is set up, both from a recruitment or an acquisition or a learning or a development or a performance, people split the project into different silos. People bought it for user experience. People bought it from a platform perspective. But when they're deploying it, the entire user experience becomes the last thing. It's all about my department and my automation. So those people who don't do that and look at that as a platform and the approach is to deploy a platform are successful.